Hi, I'm Matt from HockeyReviews.ca, and this is the CCM XF Pro Hockey Glove review. I had a lot of people ask me about these, and I was such a fan of the ASV Pro with the NestTech, I wanted to grab these and use them myself. So I ended up buying a pair of these to do an actual usage video on them so I could actually talk about them on the ice and everything. Where I didn't do that on the ASV, but I really wanted to test this out and try it compared to the FT6 Pro. CCM sent me these ones, so I was happy to do a full review on them, and I'm a pretty big fan of them, but I really wanted to put those up against these to see how good these are and to see if this NestTech and the venting on this actually does anything. We also will have a review in the future of the 4-roll Pro 3s right here. These are also Tacks gloves. I had a lot of people recommend these. I talked about these when I saw a few NHL players wearing this new style, and they're pretty interesting. So we'll do a full review of those later on as well. And in this review, we'll do the 3D fitted hand test to get an idea of how these fit. And we'll also do the grip test with our textured Bauer stick to see how the palms overall feel in play. Before we jump into all this, I did a video on a pair of Super Tacks Pro Stock gloves, which are these, but also it was a very amazing pair of Heronic gloves that Just Hockey is selling with fantastic specs on them. I also went over with the history of kind of the Tacks line and to see like all the generations of their gloves. So you can watch that video up there, check that one out. I think it's pretty interesting, and it kind of gives you an idea of where these gloves have come from. And before we talk about this glove and do any of the video on here, I have a question for everyone, is what is your favorite type of colors on gloves? A lot of these companies now are going to this whole blacked out view like these on the CCM ones. Do you like that, or do you want the white text on there, or do you want NHL colors like these Toronto Maple Leaf looking ones that you can see here? So what is your favorite and what is your preference when buying a pair of gloves? So first and foremost, and most importantly on these, is obviously the aesthetics. This is an interesting choice for CCM on these. These are obviously an all blacked out version with the black lettering, which is something different. And when I saw that they offered this one, I figured, yeah, I have to buy that just because it's so different. And as well, I do have a bunch of gloves which just have black and white on them. So I really didn't need another pair of black and white. So I went for the whole blacked out look, as you can see here. Interestingly enough, on the cuff, you can kind of see how this one is a 3D kind of embroidery on that, where this one is a lot more 2D. I love the 3D look on this. I think it looks really good. Bauer has done it in the past on their NHL gloves and their higher end ones. But on Pro Stock gloves, CCM has also done the kind of 2D version like this on the cuffs of these Pro Stock. So having the retail ones kind of like this does make it closer to some of their Pro Stock gloves, as you can totally see. So interesting, that is the take on here. The interesting other part is this piece is like a fake leather material, almost like a Gen Pro on goalie gear, instead of just being embroidered like this one is. So two different options on there. It's kind of interesting CCM is making those different choices, but this all blacked out look looks pretty interesting, and I'm kind of a fan of it. It does have a bit of a gloss to it, so you can definitely see the letters still, so it's not totally blacked out, but it is an interesting looking glove, and I think Warrior has done something like this in the past as well. They do have a lot of different materials on this glove as well. You can see it kind of right here, the TPU material on there on the side as well, and kind of the texture in here with it going through the fingers. And this is kind of a thing that CCM's done for a while for retail gloves, where they really do multiple materials, and you can kind of see it on this one a little bit as well. But this one's a lot closer to a Pro Stock, just being all nylon, where this FT6 Pro, you can see, does have that kind of TPU going through it as well. So I like the interesting and different usage of color of materials on here, just to kind of differentiate it for retail and to kind of look nice off the shelf. But my preference is always just using the standard durable nylons, and you don't have to go to the TPU thing. It looks great though, and I do like the contrasting looks between them. It's pretty solid in that sense. If you want to support the channel and buy a pair of gloves like these, check out the links in the description to Just Hockey. This can be from Canada or in the US. Clicking that link and making a purchase gives me a kickback to help support channel, so I keep making more content and doing more videos and reviews like this one. Just Hockey has allowed me to check out a bunch of their Pro Stock gloves that you saw recent videos on, which I wouldn't have an opportunity to do that unless I bought them. So huge thanks for them for letting me borrow those and take a look. So if you want to see me do more content and doing more gear videos and talk about gear, check out that link in the description to Just Hockey. Supporting them helps me so I can keep making more content and doing more videos like this. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel so I keep buying more equipment like these gloves, doing more actual reviews, check out the link in the description to buy me a coffee and Patreon. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel so I can keep making more content and doing more videos. So looking at this glove, we really can't start talking about it without going over that backhand piece. This is a very interesting idea that CCM started kind of on the last gloves, which were the ASV Pros, where they had NestTech underneath the backhand piece. So they had a shield like this, and then NestTech under here, so the airflow would come in here and go into the backhand, and you had this padded D3O and plastic, well, I think it's plastic protection piece out here. So you have a lot of protection on here with also awesome airflow by kind of opening up in the underside, and you can see it right there. It's a little bit of blue on there, just like what they did on the AirTech piece on the CCM FT6 Pros, like that. So you can definitely see that coming over on the Tacks line, which I love when they share tech between the two to really give you the best glove possible, and you can see that in there. Now, this does say D3O on it. Obviously, it has that little piece showing right there, and you can squeeze it, and it is extremely dense, and that's why I believe there is a plastic insert right here. You can kind of feel the tip of it right there, but I am not positive because you can see you can kind of squish it. It's not something like this though. This is a D3O protection piece and shot blocker that came off of one of these gloves, which kind of fit over like that. So this is the NHL version, which is super thick. This is obviously not as thick as that. So you're not getting pro stock shot blocker type thing on there, but you're getting a lot of protection back here and a D3O evidently through there. But it does feel like it has multiple layers, and it is an awesome piece of protection on there because that plate is going to do more than not having that plate, and it separates it underneath by other foams too. So it's not like it's just that plate and then your hand. You do have more breaks down there, so you can see the air, but then you do have foam right back here and right back here. So you're basically getting just an extra layer of protection on the backhand like a shot blocker would be, but you don't have plastic inserts back there, so it's not quite as much as what would be on a pro stock glove, but is pretty solid overall. And you can see it continuing and coming all the way to the side over here to cover the thumb piece as well. So you can see that little, like what looks like a plastic and feels like a plastic insert right here. If it's not, it's a very dense foam, and it's covering the side thumb piece right here as well, which does have that, again, foam padded piece under there, and then you have that part, so you have that extra layer of kind of protection there. So really it's not an extra layer, it's just a little bit floaty on top of it, so it's going to act a bit better. And then underneath you have this awesome piece of NestTech right through here for the airflow, and you can see it all in there. And I am a huge fan of NestTech on everything, and you can see going all through in here, so that way you don't have a hole and you have a bit more padding and protection. But really, if you get hit here, it's going to feel it a bit just because it is kind of NestTech and not actual foam padding through it, but that is really hard to get into that spot. A puck is probably going to hit that piece or this piece first. It's going to be really hard to get right in there. Same with a stick. Interesting idea for the actual airflow on there, which we'll talk about in a second. Now, continuing on the backhand, obviously it's hard to see what's behind this, but you can see the three pieces down here for dexterity and mobility, and you can see the fingers, which have two 3-piece middle finger and index finger, which is an improvement over what the Jet Speed does, which is just the one piece right here. I love the 3-piece. I'll show you what it does for the fingers in a second in terms of coverage and protection. On the thumb, you just have a kind of normal flex thumb right here, which has a bit of hyperextension coverage as well. Nothing crazy on that one though. Like, I can still bend it back a little bit, but it still comes back in here. And you do have that interesting XF Pro logo on there, as well as that TPU through it. Onto the cuff itself, you have a pretty dense foam all throughout it, and it is pretty solid in here. It doesn't feel like it has a plastic insert behind it. It does feel like it has a denser foam right in the middle, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's plastic because I can kind of fold it inwards like that. And behind it, you can see you don't have any spandex back here for a flex cuff because this doesn't really have a flex cuff. You can see it doesn't really move with it. So it is padded all the way throughout, and that goes all the way on the side except for right here, which should be covered by that, but there's a little gap right there to allow more flexibility, but padding all throughout. And I'm a huge fan of that. That way you don't have kind of this spandex material underneath, kind of creating a gap in protection. So you have a much more solid protection piece that way. You have your undercuff right here split on the side, so it flexes with your wrist like that. If you want more, you could cut this off so it really opens up and flexes out, kind of like this one does on the Pro Stock one. But it doesn't cause a huge issue, and it flexes pretty good, and it doesn't feel like it gets in the way at all. Even when I was wearing my elbow pads and stuff, this really never felt like it got in the way of my elbow pads, and this moved enough and got out of the way enough, which was always nice. Inner liner, you have this interesting Tacks looking design on it. You can see the texture there. I like when companies do this. It's like a sublimate design. It just gives a little bit of a feature to the actual line itself, and they did it on the Jet Speed on here, but it is a nice little interesting looking piece. Not on here, which is just kind of the Pro Stock material, but this material right here feels a slightly less soft, but it does feel like it might be more durable, and at least it is covered with Polygiene, so it should help with antimicrobial or to make it smell not bad, and it's supposed to dry a bit better as well, but you can see it through there, and it's a nice looking material. On the inner liner, it is a little bit thicker than what we've seen in the past for CCM gloves, but it is very soft, as you can see, very comfortable back here. Also on the thumb as well, but the thumb is even thinner than what the backhand is, and it has a hole through it, so you can see that right there, because it's harder to get this on camera, but there is that hole with that AirTech kind of going through. You can see a little bit of blue part in there, hopefully, and that is so the air transfers straight through the hole back here onto your hand without getting stuck in the liner. So nice little cutout here, solid job. And they did stitch the edges of it, which is a nice touch. They really didn't have to do that in terms of, like, most people wouldn't see that and wouldn't have issues with it, but stitching it is going to make that hole last a little bit longer than if they didn't. Nice touch there for extra durability. And you can really hopefully see that hole looking in there. You can kind of see the light coming through it, and that is going straight all the way through. According to CCM, the actual D3O foam package on here is just on the back piece right here. So even though it has D3O on here, it's not the same as what they've done in the past where it actually was a top layer of foams on here. It is just the backhand piece on here, which is kind of disappointing. And while other companies have completely got rid of their smart foams like the Poron and Bauer, at least it's still on the backhand, but not having it through the fingers is disappointing, and not having it through the backhand foams right here as well is disappointing. Now, they totally took out D3O in the Jet Speed line. Talked about that before. They went for the lighter weight Zote foam in here for the foam package. And on the Tacks, it is not using a Zote foam, and it is a kind of soft density foam, as you can see down there. I think they call it their comfort foam, but it is softer and it doesn't feel quite as dense as what the Zote foam one does, and it doesn't feel as thick as what the Zote foam one is. It does have a higher density foam on top of their soft foam underneath, so you do have that multiple layers of density with softer, harder on top, and then that plastic tip. This is a bit disappointing part because on previous gloves, like the Ultra Tacks, it had a piece of D3O on the top of it, and you can see that with the Pro Stock ones, but unfortunately that is gone on these, and you kind of lose that foam. With that said, that piece of D3O was so thin that it really didn't do all that much, and you could get away with having a more dense foam like other companies do on the top, and it wasn't a big thing. The real thing you're losing though, but they never really did this at the retail, is having this whole piece of foam as D3O, because it is extremely protective and dense foam. You can see how hard that is to squeeze, and it does rebound itself afterwards. So they never had that retail, but it is disappointing that they are taking that D3O out of the actual pieces on here. Now, with that said, this piece right here on the back end is very, very dense. So it feels like it is the entire dense part on the top here. It just goes through the whole thing. So I don't know if this does have a softer level underneath, because when you really squeeze it, you can't really feel it. It's just dense all the way through. Same with this piece right here, and same with this piece right here. So much better than what we've seen some of the competition recently, kind of going away from using proprietary foams, which is like D3O, and as well going away from the plastic inserts to get lighter weight. CCM still giving you a very protective glove overall with a nice triple density package on here. Side finger protection also has 3 pieces right here, and this is foam with a plastic insert in front of all of them, and 3 pieces is really nice, so when you really close it around, it covers all of that. And then when we go on the outside, you have your 2-piece, again, feels like that foam with plastic inserts on it, and then the side right here, same thing. So it feels like that foam with the plastic insert for protection on the side, so sticks ramping up and hitting there, you are more covered. So for protection on this, I have taken some pucks off them from games, and I have taken a bunch of slashes as well, and I have felt honestly nothing. I've been very surprised by how good these are. Usually retail gloves, they kind of feel a bit when you get sticks in the fingers. This has been pretty good, but just as a slight demonstration, I really can't feel that all that much, and it feels pretty solid. And then when you have that 3-piece fingers, you can see it's harder to get sticks and pucks through them. This one, possible, but I can't even touch my skin really through it, which was a huge problem previously on Warrior gloves and Bauer gloves like that. Same with this, and this is a mini stick, and it will barely fit through there because this foam package right here, this extra little piece, gets in the way. So it's a great design in that sense, and it really kind of closes the gaps on the fingers. On the backhand, like that shell right here is doing so much, you don't really feel anything. It's really good. And then even that is beefy enough that it's solid as well. It's so hard to make sure anything on the cuff like that, you can't feel it. You can still feel it, but it's so much better than if it had spandex behind there, because with that spandex, that would just transfer straight into your wrist because there's that gap, and it doesn't feel like that at all. And on the side here, you can definitely feel it because the impact goes through this. It kind of hits this gap and transfers into your wrist. So unfortunately, because it doesn't have that extra padding on there, you can really feel that impact going straight through, which is a bit disappointing. And on that side, it's definitely a lot better. And then we get to the thumb, and the thumb is not comfortable, to be honest. I think this could definitely be beefed up. So you have all these plastic pieces over here. I would love to see this kind of another piece extended, because there is no plastic on here, you can see with that. And really they're relying on the plastic in the thumb piece, which causes this to flex, and it's underneath. But when that plastic is at the bottom piece, the soft foams on here kind of transfer all that into the plastic, and then that plastic doesn't have a lot behind it. It's basically just this and then a tiny bit of kind of liner material on there. So the thumb is not the best on this. So I really do wish they added a piece of plastic through here, because you kind of want the plastic and then foam and then that other thumb plastic to really disperse it that way, because this way the foam isn't doing enough dispersion, hitting that plastic's transferring in, so that is not the best. Now for the NestTech piece, it doesn't feel great, but it's not that bad. And to be honest, it's going to be really hard to hit that NestTech piece, because you're going to see it's going to hit kind of everywhere else. So you'd almost have to do that, which isn't the best since it's here, but I have a feeling a stick won't really ever hit this that much, and it's going to be a rare stinger kind of thing. I have no issues with that being there. I haven't noticed it on ice in my testing like this. Yeah, you can notice it, but that thumb honestly felt worse than the NestTech did. So it's a trade-off that I'm totally willing to have. I've had people ask me over and over again of what socks I always recommend, and I've been using Cutshield for a while now. I have multiple stuff for them. So Cutshield is a company out of Canada that makes cut resistant socks, and these are their Pro Air 6, which means it's an anti-level 6 for cut resistance on here. Full review of it up there so you can check it out. But I now have a coupon code with Cutshield, so if you want to support the channel, you can check out the link in the description to Cutshield, buy some socks, which I think are honestly one of the better socks on the market. I absolutely love them. They're pretty thin and they are cut resistant, and they're not too hot either. Use my coupon code, you get 25% off, and it helps support the channel. So we talked about the protection package and everything, and also for Dexterity on this. Because it does have this, you'd think it wouldn't be able to move that well, but when you look at it, you can move that pinky fine, and the whole glove closes fine, and this isn't even that broken in. You'll get more broken in as it goes, where this will really flex down, as you can see, but as of right now, it doesn't need it on my hands to really close fine, and pinky to thumb is totally easy. Flex thumb works, but it doesn't move all that much. You can see it moving a little bit, but that pinky to thumb piece on there is good, and its Dexterity is totally fine, especially with those fingers. The multi-piece brakes feel really good in your hands, and they move around really well. So Dexterity on this is pretty solid overall. Now, flex cuff like this, you can see because it's hitting this kind of piece and it's not able to ramp up, it does a little bit get in the way, but this just floats up and down anyway. So if you watch that, it doesn't really cause any issues because it kind of just acts as an outer plate, whereas sometimes shot blockers that are really kind of sealed in here and don't move get stuck on that cuff, but it moves and it has no issues whatsoever. So wearing elbow pads, this is a bit misleading because I would normally wear a 15, so the 14s come up a little short, as you can see, and normally with that 15 be a bit higher, so it would be a bit more coverage. But you can see with interference on the Tacks, it works really well. It doesn't get in the way whatsoever, but again, coming up a little short just because I would normally use a taller glove. And same thing with the jet speeds, which are definitely bigger. You can see it doesn't really come in the way at all, and it works totally fine, and have no issues with that cuff getting in the way of the actual glove itself. With that said, usually I wear these, which are my Cutshield cut resistant wrist guards with Evo Shield on the inside, and I wear them to help hold up my elbow pads so they don't move. I can't wear these with these gloves because the cuff is too tight. So when I have an Evo Shield piece in here, it feels like it's pushing the glove off too much because it just gets in the way of the cuff. So even that little tiny piece right there, because really it's going to be like really flat under here, but you can see it kind of goes in like that. I feels like they're pushing the glove off, so I can't actually wear these with this glove. I didn't have that issue with the jet speed just because the cuff's a little bit more open on there, like as you can see right here. So when this was in there, it didn't push the glove off and it felt totally fine. Now getting on to the palms themselves, they have their Sensi Last Pro, which evidently was the same material that was on the jet speed. You can kind of see it right there where it says Sensi Last Pro on it, and it does actually feel the exact same, and it is also slightly different. This is just a Sensi Last, so not the Pro, but the material on here feels like it's the exact same. So this is not an AX suede. This is kind of their own material. I have an AX suede glove right here, and the AX suede is softer to the touch, to be honest, and it just feels like it's a bit maybe thinner. This one almost feels like it's almost a plastic, which obviously isn't the best thing for me talking about feeling. Felt that the jet speed ones didn't feel as like kind of plasticky than what these ones did and the other new Tacks ones did. So I'm not sure what is really on here, if it's a coating or something, but it just feels like it's a little more grippy than you'd expect. But it's not grippy in a tactile way. It's almost just a grippy and like it's a almost hard way, and it's interesting to say the least. Now, I have no real issues with these palms. They're okay. They're just not absolutely amazing, and they're not as nice as an AX suede, and they're not as nice as some other gloves, like pro stock gloves, obviously. So they're just okay. Now I do like the little texture on it, like they've sublimated, I think, designs on here or printed designs on here. I don't really care about the grip down here. I kind of wish companies got away with that. I don't like the printed or like glued on type thing, because you can see it kind of cracking a bit on there. I don't really like that on palms. I think it kind of takes away from feel. Even this 3D texture kind of thing they did on the previous glove, I liked more than what this one was, because you can see it kind of just cracking on there, and I don't think it's needed. But I do love the grid pattern on here for no reason, just because it looks cool, but it's really not necessary. Now these palms are also very, very complicated, which is kind of surprising. Now you can see on the inside, it has that one seam going through it right there, and it has more as well. So that's just the main one between kind of the thumb piece and over here. But look at how complicated these palms are. Even on the thumb isn't just one piece, it has an overlay kind of for this part, and then the actual thumb tip itself is just a single layer. So interesting that they're going all that way to make that happen, as well down here and on here as well. So you can see this overlay right here, which is where that big connection piece was, kind of dips down over here, right between your fingers right here where the stick kind of grips. So interesting that they decided to do all of that for that. The other thing on this is you can see this air net right here. This is for airflow, and it's all through back here and on the back of the thumb as well. This whole glove is all airflow. That's why the NestTech is there, kind of like what they did with the Jet Speed with the AirTech. So you can see that coming through here as well, to allow cold air to kind of come through the glove, or hot air to escape from the glove. And you can definitely feel, even me doing this right now, I can feel cold air coming through this part of the glove. So it's a great design, and when you're on the ice, it's even cooler, and it feels very nice in that regards. So I'm a huge fan of it. You also have little holes put on the palm right here as well, which I don't know if this is just for manufacturing reasons. It was on the Tacks, which doesn't really have the whole airflow thing either, the 4-roll, and it has been on the Jet Speeds as well in the past. So I'm not sure if this is an airflow thing for the little holes or a manufacturing thing to hold the palm down, but it does work with some airflow because it does allow some air to come through it as well. So I won't complain about that whatsoever. One thing on these gloves that makes me kind of frustrated, and that is the gussets on here. So you can see this has a spandex gusset through the side, like this coming through, which obviously is nice for comfort, and it stretches out more and it really allows a glove to flex more. But you can also see it has a Nash piece on the fingertips right here, so it allows it also to stretch like that. You know, the idea of the Nash piece here is like these gloves, where it's a lot bigger of a Nash piece, as you can see, is so your fingers don't blow out the edges of the glove, and you get more protection. Because if your fingers blow out and this comes down, you end up being able to hit your finger right here on your stick, and that's obviously not a good thing. Now, the idea of this Nash is obviously to hold that in place. So if your fingers happen to hit the Nash, yes, the Nash holds it in a better place like that. But when you actually close your fingers, it just kind of pulls away from the Nash and it exposes your fingers more. Whereas if you had a full Nash design like this, your fingers are a lot more kind of covered. Now this glove is a little bit bigger, but it's not totally covered, but it's a lot better than having spandex, allowing this to stretch out. And this is a case of the FT6 Pro where this does have spandex, as you can see, and it really opens it up when you do this. So this is a weird case of trying to do the best setup that I think there is for the gussets and having that Nash, but also having the spandex kind of counteract that whole purpose by just stretching too much and coming down. Now, I also think the point of this, having the spandex through here, I don't think it's a comfort thing down here. I think it's a breathability thing, because having that spandex down there breathes a lot better than Nash does. But here's my suggestion for this glove. You have all this air mesh right here, and gloves in the past have used air mesh on the fingertips and the whole gussets. Here's an example of a glove that had that. There's been a ton of pro stock gloves that also had that. Air mesh obviously breathes better than what Nash does. So if you want to have this kind of Nash material here to have that lack of flexibility for more protection and that better design, put this basically here. So keep it all the way around, so that way that won't stretch, because this piece right here doesn't stretch out like spandex does. So you get that excellent like maximum length on here for fingers, while also having breathability, which the spandex here will supply a bit of. Now, if this was done as a comfort thing because people need spandex in their gussets, and if they feel the ends like, oh, it's too tight, I don't like that, then you're kind of stuck with that, which is kind of the problems with retail. But I really think this is kind of not needed if you're doing the spandex on here, because it's not really doing much. So I wish that was changed, because that is a really disappointing thing, and it was on the last ones as well. So I'd really love to see this change as something else, because I actually hate this kind of feature as well, because when I'm playing with it, I can feel the tips hitting and then they end up just stretching past. So when I'm playing with it, I can definitely feel my fingertips on here and then just also stretching past. So it's like a weird, you can see it, my fingers kind of doing this. It's like a weird edge point, and it kind of just goes past it. Now, also these gloves are too small on me. So if you are an actual 14-inch, maybe this won't be an issue, but because I'm doing the review with the hand test to see the fit profile and everything, I order 14s. So for me, a 15 might not cause that issue, but I think this is a weird design that can be definitely changed. For our grip test, and we have the textured Bauer grip as our default stick. This is actually a surprisingly, like you can feel it through it, which is surprising for a retail glove. Now this palm itself, this Sensi-Last, because it is an overlay, and I kind of showed the inner piece of the base and then this part, you really don't feel the texture through this at all on the actual like palm itself, which is pretty standard on most gloves and pro stocks that have multiple layers. But you can feel it on the thumb because that thumb is an exposed single piece right there. You can see how that extra layer doesn't go all the way to the thumb. So when you do have your thumb on here, you can definitely feel that texture going through it, which is fantastic. And you can definitely feel it through the fingertips as well. So all that fingertip, because it's all that single layer, you can definitely feel the texture through it, and it feels very good. Now grip itself is pretty solid, to be honest. And that is maybe part of that plasticky feeling I was talking about, but it does grip pretty well. You can see it, like me squeezing it really hard to move it on this grip. So overall, this is a pretty solid glove with pretty decent grip on it. It's not digital or anything, but it's pretty solid overall. Now, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. I mentioned it. Find that AX suede to be much more softer and more comfortable to wear, but it works fine. And honestly, when I'm wearing this glove, I never say, man, I wish that palm was different. So it's not the nicest thing to touch, but really that's a massive nitpick, and it works really well on the stick, and it has worked totally fine with me wearing it and using it and testing it. Now, while I will not weigh gloves anymore because people chase weights too much, the Jet Speed was a pretty light glove, and the Tacks honestly is pretty light as well. They don't really feel too far from each other. They feel both very, very light. They don't feel like a pro stock glove, which is this, which is noticeably heavier because it has that full D3O package. They feel a lot lighter and closer to like what retail gloves and what you'd expect are. Probably not the lightest thing on the market because there's still plastic inserts on here, like a lot of companies are getting away from now, but they're solid overall, and I have no issues with the weight on it at all. And now for my absolute favorite part of this, and that is the NestTech piece. And I talked about the NestTech previously on the ASV Pros and how it was back here. But one of the things I said on it, and I'm going to cut this part of the video in just to call it out, and also lower like right here, because your hands are always closed on your sticks. If you had a way to add venting basically right in here and allow air, especially when you're skating, your hands are moving like that, it would go in there a lot better than it would go up here. The other place I think they could like maybe add a vent is like on the side right here, and maybe even on like right here basically. So if they somehow figure a way to kind of put a little gap there, maybe some NestTech so that air will go right through on both these. Because when you are skating like this, when your stick's not like this obviously, and you're skating like this, that will be the air going directly kind of through it right there. And that way it wouldn't have to go like in that way, it would just be going through the sides. And as you can see, I said they should put the NestTech on the thumb, because when you're skating, you're going like this and that air is coming directly into the side. When the Jet Speed line came out, they have that hole right here, which this one is a little bit smaller, but my other glove, it's more visible and it's on the backhand as well. But I definitely noticed this one in the side when you're skating like this, and you definitely noticed it on this one as well when it was on here. I love the idea of the NestTech in the back here, but having this open, this little channel straight through, works honestly a lot better than the NestTech did. And this NestTech on the side really works well, and you can really feel that air coming through here. Now, when I was wearing this glove, this is probably one of the hottest summers I've ever experienced where I am, and hockey for this summer has been brutal in terms of terrible ice and how hot and humid the rinks are. I was wearing these, I'm like, wow, I don't even notice the holes in it. I don't notice the NestTech. It's not really cooling my hands down. I'm like, I really remember the Jet Speeds working a lot better. So then I went back and I wore non-breathable gloves, so just like pro stock gloves, and then I noticed a huge difference when I wore one on one hand and this one on the other hand. And then I even tested with the Jet Speed one, so I wore this one on my left hand, this one on my right hand, and just skating around and kind of swinging my arms around just to feel the air coming through. The Tacks work better than the Jet Speed did, surprisingly, which I was very surprised at. But the big thing I think is this piece right here, just because this is so much more open and there's so much more of airflow coming through that thumb piece, which is kind of harder to see in there, but it's that little blue piece, hopefully it comes off on camera in there. It's that whole big blue piece in there, and the breathability on that is just fantastic. So you can really feel this cooling down your hand, and you can feel the air coming through this a lot, and more so than what was on this one. So that was surprising. And clearly the summer heat is just something that made it very different, and notice how hot I was running, but these did an amazing job for that. Well, it is kind of a gimmick because it's NestTech, and really you could just kind of put a hole there like they did in the past, but this idea is fantastic and it really works, and it really helps cool your hands down. And when I go to gloves like this, which is just a pro stock glove without any of that air cooling pieces, pieces, or even this glove, which is just a standard 4-roll. The coolness of my hands through these and the less sweat coming out of these and this one, but it's amazing. And I absolutely love the feeling of it and just keeps my hands cooler, and I don't feel like all sweaty and gross with my hands. So absolutely love that this is a thing. And CCM is that one company that's really trying to push things in gloves still. And I find that really awesome. Most companies I feel like have kind of plateaued for gloves. They're not trying anything crazy anymore. Some companies are adding better phones like Warrior. Bauer's just getting bad overall. But these are an awesome idea and it really works. So I'm really happy to see that in here. I really want a Pro Stock version of these to see what changes, because I did see the NestTech on the Pro Stock version for the Utah Hockey Club. So I'm going to try to grab a pair of those to really take a look at them. Now for the 3D printed hand test, and to reiterate what this is basically a 15-inch hand. This is a 14-inch hand. We're going to put them in the glove to show you how it fits, because these are standard. Every single glove I use and review, I put these in there so you get an idea of how a 15-inch hand kind of fits in a glove compared to another one. And this is standard hand, so it will be consistent over all the brands. So we'll throw these in here and get an idea of how big they really fit as. And we have that 14-inch in the left one right here, and that 15-inch one on the right one. And when you check out the fingertips, you can see the fingertips are all basically right at the end and blowing past the end on here, which makes sense because this is a 14-inch CCM retail glove, and CCM has been pretty consistent with the jet speed and the Tacks non-4-roll line for actual sizing. And when we get to the actual 14, you can see it doesn't go to the end. It's just barely at the end on some of them, and it doesn't blow by at all. So it feels very consistent to be a 14. So if you're a 14 in, say, a Bauer or old CCM gloves that aren't the 4 rolls, this will fit as standard. And this one, if you're a 15, you definitely need to go higher, because that is, the tip is all right at the edge right there, and right at the edge right there. So totally standard fit on these compared to their other retail offerings. Now for the fit profile of these gloves, this is the Tacks line, which has been pretty consistent for a while. So it is a bit looser in the fingers and kind of backhand, and tighter on the cuff. It is really interesting that how different these are between the two, and that cuff is that big piece. Normally I would say these are like a vapor, and I still kind of do, because the fingers and backhand feel like a vapor, but the cuff itself, you can see how much tighter that is compared to the blooming on the jet speed, where the jet speed definitely has that cuff like a vapor one. So it's an interesting mix of the two. Now when you put these on, you can definitely see that cuff difference on here, and I talked about it with the Shield and the Cutshield piece on this glove, where I couldn't use that because it felt like it pushed the glove off. For snugness, you can see right there the Tacks is a lot less snug than what the jet speed is. It comes off easier, and honestly, if you were using a Tacks glove that was the right size for you, it's going to fit a bit looser. Normally for me, when I wear Tacks, I like to size down, because I find them too loose in the backhand right here and a little bit in the fingers. But because this is a 14, it's already sized down, it's totally fine for me, and it's a bit loose, but it's like tight enough, and it doesn't come off that easy. When I go to Pro Stock, which is this one, this is a Tacks glove, it's a 14-inch. It becomes very loose, because these really are like a 14 and a half. So the Pro Stock ones are definitely a lot looser than what the retail one is, but the difference between these, this is a lot more snug than what this one is, and you can see that right there, how that plays. Again, this backhand though is pretty tight, which is kind of a unique thing I find with CCM gloves, especially compared to Bauer in this kind of fit profile. And I definitely noticed it with the Shield. So that's just a bit of a warning. Normally I don't have an issue with that at all, but that Shield is something that kind of causes it. If I don't wear the Shield, I have no issues with this. It doesn't get in the way. As you can see, it doesn't get in the way. It still opens up, and it, like, even back here, doesn't really get in the way. But so that's about it for my review of the CCM XF Pro hockey gloves. These are a pretty awesome retail glove. It is not a Pro Stock glove, and it doesn't have the foam package of the Pro Stock gloves that I've shown off in the past. These are a fantastic glove, and the NestTech really works. I love to see that innovation. Palms are okay, they work fine, they could be softer, but this glove is really good and really solid, and it's an easy retail recommendation for me. I do wish there were a few changes on there. I talked about it for the palm and the fingertips, but overall this thing is solid, and I really like them. Now I bought these gloves, and because they're 14s, they're simply too small on me, and I kind of talked about that with the fit test where my fingers blow past them. So for that, I am not going to keep wearing them and keep using them. So hopefully this video was helpful. If this video was helpful in buying gear like these gloves, which I bought myself, please let CCM know on social media through Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, anything on there. Let them know, hey, I bought a piece of your gear because of hockey reviews. Would love to see them review more gear. That'd be greatly appreciated, because like I said, I bought those 4 rolls myself because I want to take a look at them and do a real review on them, and that's cost money. So it'd be greatly appreciated to let CCM know that these reviews are helpful. Thank you very much for watching this video. Remember to like this video, subscribe to back me on YouTube, follow me on TikTok and Instagram. Links are in the description. If you want to support the channel and you're buying hockey equipment anyways, whether you're in the US or Canada, check out the links in the description too. Just Hockey, clicking that link, making a purchase gives me a kickback so I can keep making more content and doing more reviews like this. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description to Patreon, buy me a coffee. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel so I can keep buying more gear and making more content. Thank you very much for watching and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.